So at one point in time, small cameras were in, and that's how we got the world's smallest SLR camera, the Pentax Auto 110. In 1972, Kodak introduced 110 film, which is one of the smallest film formats, with each frame being 13mm by 17mm. And Pentax wanted to capitalize off that new format, so the Auto 110 was introduced with 3 interchangeable lenses in 1978. Loading the film is really easy because they come in these cartridges that you just unwrap and simply stick in the camera and start shooting. So the first roll I shot with this was last March, so almost a year now, and I also waited a year to get that roll developed, which probably wasn't the smartest thing either because those images are now super grainy. Like I was using 200 ISO film in broad daylight, and these are the grainiest images that I own, and I usually shoot, concerts at 2000 ISO and even nighttime film at 3200 ISO. So don't be dumb like me and wait a year to get your film developed, unless you like that super old grainy aesthetic look, then I guess, do wait a year. When I picked up this camera, it came with an auto winder, which I've never used and probably never intend to use because I like winding my own film, and 2 lenses, an 18mm and a 50mm. And the first roll I shot with this, I used both lenses, but then kind of between that year between the first roll and the second roll, the 18mm lens broke on me, so the second roll I had to shoot entirely with the 50mm lens. And usually that wouldn't be a problem because the main lens I use on a 35 is a 50mm, but the equivalent of this 50mm on this tiny camera, say to a 35 camera, is 100mm, so that is, just super tight for me, and I kept having to back up a lot to get everything that I wanted in my shot, and then, for some of the frames, the images are a lot tighter than I wanted them to be. This camera is also fully automatic, hence the name, which makes it fairly easy to use, and it also surprisingly does a good job with the exposure, but if you are worried that you're not going to have enough light, you can also pick up a flash to go with the camera. Now 110 film can be hard to buy and develop because the only company that still makes 110 film is Thermography, and for developing, not a lot of film labs typically develop 110 film, so you might have to end up, shipping your film off far away to get it developed, but luckily for me, my local film lab does develop 110 film, so if I ever wanted to shoot a lot more of it, I easily could compared to others. But it is actually kind of fun and interesting to shoot with this camera. Looking through the viewfinder, things are nice and clear, which is kind of impressive just for the small size of it. It was a little less fun shooting with the 50mm, but my images still turn out great, and I do like the colors that I got from the film, which for some weird reason the name of it is Tiger. And obviously my images aren't super sharp, and even though I was shooting 200 ISO, even for the roll that didn't wait a year to get developed, the images were still super grainy as, compared to shooting 400 ISO on, 35 and 120. but those just have to do with the size and limitations of the camera and film. Because, when you're shooting on something this small compared to something a lot bigger, obviously, this thing won't do as well. But, depending on what you shoot with this, and, if you don't need to make your images super big, this could actually be, the perfect camera for you.
Wow.